Welcome back, Peter Winslow. How are you, man?
Hey, Skylar, it's good to be with you today. I'm doing great, thanks.
Good, good.
Life is good.
Life is good, and I've really been excited to publish another episode with you. I've been having so much fun with these, and the feedback is excellent, and we just have a lot of fun. So I'm really happy that you're here.
Yeah, me too. It's good to be with you, and I'm glad that we're doing and you are doing what you're doing in the world, and we're doing this together. It's wonderful.
It
So
is
many
wonderful.
people are offering here,
Hmm.
can help so many people, and they can help others as well.
Yeah, yeah. It's been really fun to be a part of this family that's growing, and people getting better and better and better. And it's an honor. It's an absolute honor.
You're leading the tribe, my friend.
Yeah. So before we got on the call, I was thinking, I had a memory. And I remember the very first video I found of you on the internet and the feeling I had. I was like, yes, like there's hope and there's guidance and there's a person who knows what's up. It's telling me that there's something I can do about AS. That feeling was so powerful for me that no matter what other people said, I just felt that what you had to say was the truth. And now I was thinking about building this podcast with you, and I still have that same energy inside. It's like it's a big yes, right? There's so much hope, there's so much inspiration in that feeling that I had when I saw that first video with you, and it still rings true. And it's that feeling that's helped bring this podcast to fruition.
So
Yeah.
when you saw my videos online and it resonated with you, that's the same thing that other people are having listening to this podcast. It's either resonates with them or it doesn't.
Hmm.
And as one of my teachers like to say, when the student is ready, the teacher appears.
Hmm.
So that's what happened for you when you found my videos.
Totally. And there's so much of a feeling involved with it. And I was speaking with a client yesterday, and he was like, Sky, everything you're telling me like just feels good inside. And he was noticing part of his brain was trying to like prove me wrong and say that, he couldn't get better and sort of protect protect the symptom in his body, kind of keep him in his comfort zone in a way by sort of just not letting him fully actualize yet what I was teaching him. But it's step by step by step, and he's doing fantastic.
That's the protectorate of the ego, the part that
Yeah.
doubts or the part that finds fault or doesn't want to believe it because it's afraid of being made a fool of.
Huh.
If I buy this whole lot kit and caboodle from you and believe what you're saying, it might not work for me, and then I'll be a fool. I've been on a
Hmm.
fool's errand and I blew it and I made a mistake. And people are loathly afraid to make mistakes. Do not
Yeah.
make mistakes. And yet,
Yeah.
how else do we learn? We learn from our mistakes. The wisdom is in learning it and not repeating the mistakes we make.
Hmm. Yeah.
That's the
Yeah.
ego trying to protect us and keep us in that comfort zone.
Yeah. Well, and that's kind of a great segue into one of our three topics that we're going to talk about today. And it's how chronic pain can keep us safe and keep us in our comfort zones. Is that something you've noticed with yourself and with your clients over the years?
Oh, it's absolutely a reality. It was my situation back when I was in the symptoms back in the 1980s. Yeah, oh yeah, I was a victim, indeed. It becomes an identity. We identify with our conditions. And as Eckhart Tolle talks about in his book, A New Earth, he says that people start to think of you as this is your identity. You're a patient with AS. So the doctors and the nurses and the practitioners and the family members and the friends and everybody pays attention to you based on that. So that
Hmm.
becomes something that you identify with, and you can create it. And that's what the ego is doing, is creating its identity through you. So this becomes a comfort zone when you get used to it, which is in fact oxymoronic and counterintuitive because the purpose of disease is healing. And the reason that we get these symptoms is to knock us out of a comfort zone so that we'll go into the healing properties and principles that change our lives. That's what AS has come to do, knock us out of our comfort zone. It's so uncomfortable. You can't ignore it. 24 hours a day, 7 days a week for me. I couldn't ignore it, and it became my identity, and I forged a comfort zone from that. And so it never left. As long as I was in that identity and in that mindset, it became comfortable and practical for me to stay there. And everybody I knew was alluding to the fact that I had this condition called AS, right? And that's who I am, and that's what I'm dealing with, and that's why I can't go dancing on Saturday night, and I can't go hiking next week, and I can't go on vacation and camp and all the rest of that, because my identity says we don't do these things. So it becomes that comfort zone, that identity. And in fact, that's human nature. People, even people without AS, are doing that all the time. They're forming comfort zones and remaining within those comfort zones, no matter how uncomfortable it gets. They stay there because it feels typical for them.
Yeah.
You know, it's where they exist and where they feel most comfortable, so to speak, because it's known. It's a known quantity.
Yeah.
So that's human nature, to get into that rut. And then life comes along and kicks our butt out of the rut.
Yeah.
And that's usually where people have the opportunity to change or to make the mistakes and go back to making the same old mistakes.
So this is a really good conversation to have, because I think a lot of people are staying in their comfort zone because of AS, and they're not realizing how it's actually not serving them. So you kind of just hit on something important, and you gave some examples of what it's like when someone is staying in their comfort zone. And the examples you gave were basically excuses not to go do things, like excuses not to go dancing. And do you find that when people constantly sort of justify why they can't go do something, that is them staying in the comfort zone, holding on to that victimized mentality, and that mentality does not actually help them recover from pain?
Well, that's exactly right. And of course, they maintain their identity from that comfort zone, which becomes familiar.
Yeah.
So that's why it's comfortable to them. No matter how much it hurts, it's familiar.
Yeah.
So they don't want to leave that. So they form an identity around that situation and condition. And they believe that's who they are. And as you believe, so you receive. So there's no healing there. So then they listen to practitioners who say, there's no healing here. There's no cure for this. There's nothing more we can do about this. And they believe it. And as they believe, they create and conceive and receive in the world and in their bodies and minds firsthand. So all they have to do is understand how life works to break that cycle. And that's what I coach in my program, Immaculate Reception. It's a simple 5-stage process. You'll remember that because I brought it to you. And that's what allowed you to change your identity completely, get out of that familiar comfort zone and do what you needed to do to move on. And it was easier than you thought, wasn't it?
Yeah. Yeah. That 5-step process that you broke down for me is something that I still consistently use. In my room, I have a poster and I drew it and it's been there for years. And it's something that I consistently use with myself and with clients. And it made profound shifts. Yeah.
That's what we're doing, making profound shifts.
Yeah. So jumping back to the comfort zone thing though, because I think a lot of people are here. What that looked like for me was, again, a lot of excuses of things I wasn't going to go do, because like back pain is the best excuse for anything, right? Like, I can't go do that because I like my back hurts. It's because back pain sucks, right?
Oh yeah.
And then I heard someone say something one time that I really, really liked. And she said, every time you justify why you can't go do something, you're putting a nail through your foot, keeping you in that place. You're anchoring yourself to the ground every time you justify why you can't go do something. And
that's right. And it's all mental.
It's mental, totally. And so with you and your clients, I'm curious. So if you get someone on the phone that has AS and they want to reduce their pain, and you notice that they're making excuse after excuse after excuse of things that they can't go do, like, one of your clients, you just talked about dancing. She chose not to go dancing on Saturday nights. Like, what processes do you see in their mind, or what is something that you talk to them about when you see them making excuses for everything?
I meet them where they are. It's not my job to change their lives or to force them into some realization that they're not ready for. Again, when the student is ready, the teacher appears. And by the way, I judged nobody. I was just as bad or worse in my own behaviors and beliefs as anybody I've ever met. probably worse in many cases. So I don't judge them. If they're stuck to those things, what I do is ask them, how does that serve you? How is that remaining in service to you to not go out on Saturday nights? And they look for something deeper.
Yeah.
So the excuses become identified as simple shields or protection devices that keep people from living their best lives. Because it all comes back to one thing and one thing only. At the end of the day, at the end of the year, at the end of the whole season, they have a belief system that says they are not good enough. And so their body is punishing them on that premise. So you know the work of Dr. John Sarno, who talks about perfectionist personalities and people pleasers, among others.
Yeah.
Those are people with the solid belief that they are not doing well enough. Unless they're perfect, it's not good enough. And of course, nobody can be perfect, so they're never good enough. So the excuses crop up. They become crutches in a way that prevents people from leaving their comfort zone. And they continue to degenerate and deteriorate worse and worse and worse until they eventually pass away. And I've seen people on their deathbed going, oh my God, why did I do that? What was life really about if that's all I did? I mean, why did I do what I did and didn't do what I didn't do? And so they die unresolved. So what we want to do ultimately, all of us, is when we come to that place of the end of life, you know, through the experience that we call death, we want to make that transition gracefully, if at all possible. And no matter how it happens, whether it's from disease or illness or injury or what have you, if you're okay with who you are and how you've lived your life, that's the goal. So it doesn't matter where you've been and what you've been through and how many mistakes you've made and how terrible you were. All of it can be resolved. And that's what these conditions of chronic pain are teaching us, to let go of these identification factors in the comfort zones of familiarity that tell us we're not good enough. And just get to the place where you understand and feel that, well, of course, I did my best. So if you haven't done your best until now, I suggest wholeheartedly you do it. That's the message that disease is bringing to your life. That's what you ultimately have to learn. So it isn't just make the pain go away. The pain will go away. As we've seen, the pain drops away on its own when you get in alignment with your true self and your highest purpose. And you practice the behaviors and beliefs that lead to healing. So that's what we're doing, and that's what's most important overall. Would you agree?
Totally. Yeah. Nice words. Very good words. With this comfort zone thing, I mean, yeah, you just said a lot there that I want to hit on a little bit. Excuses. So be aware where we're making excuses for ourselves. That is, in a way, locking in illness and keeping us miserable, but comfortable and like in a very familiar space. Again, I remember this vividly. I remember where I was living at the time and the specific couch that I would sit on. And from that couch, it's the same couch I found you on. And it's also the same couch that I made a hell of a lot of excuses from and justified why I couldn't go do things. And again, I'm really glad you said something about like not judging people that do that, because you and I, bro, like we could have been the worst out of this. Like you said, you made plenty of excuses because it's a very easy thing to do when you're in pain. It's natural. And I think a big part of that is the brain wants to keep us safe. The brain wants to keep us alive. And so we'll choose to stay small and stay in that comfort zone because it is, even though it's like miserable at times, it becomes familiar over time.
That's right.
Yeah. We essentially kind of condition ourselves to be there.
You better get rid of that couch. You don't need it anymore.
That couch is literally thousands of miles away now. It's not the one behind me. You know, it's also, dude, it's also the same couch that like I opened up the package that had your Heal for Real book in it. So, right? So,
all right.
So a broad spectrum of experiences on that couch, and right, everything serves. Now, dude, now we can laugh about it. Like, how amazing is that?
That's right. That's the payoff. That's the joy of living.
Yeah.
When you can laugh about your circumstances and situations, you know you've made that transition. So how do you know when you've learned a lesson? And the answer is when your behavior changes. It isn't that you've read the book and you can pass the test and write, you know, an essay on the lesson. It's when your behavior changes.
Yeah.
learn that lesson.
Yeah.
And yours, my friend, has certainly changed.
And that is where coaching is such gold, because people can read a book, but then lots of times the book doesn't change their habits and behaviors. To me, I think I could have continued to read books for 10 years and I probably would have had some success, but it was coaching that changed my behaviors, that changed my outlook, that gave me the wisdom to look at things differently, that allowed me to ultimately change my behaviors.
Well, you read a few books in there too. I gave you a signed reading.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Totally. Yeah. Yeah. And I really loved that part of it too, because I got the scientific understandings. I got sort of like even spiritual texts that help me understand that there's a lot more to life than I might have been seeing. And then the very specific advice mentally from you, and then the specific advice with exercise from you. And so it was kind of this body, mind, spirit approach. Plus there was friendship, there was accountability, there was literally learning how to exercise from you training me. And those all, not that everyone needs that, because a lot of people are recovering without that, but for me at the time, it allowed for very, very fast success.
Yeah, well, exercise is a behavior that healthy people do. So you began to see yourself in a new light and
Yeah.
identify yourself with getting bigger and stronger and healthier. And then it
Mm-hmm.
becomes enjoyable in the fact that it feels good. And you look in the mirror with your shirt off and you look good. And so you're forming an identity that replaces that old victim mentality of I'm weak, I suck, I'm terrible, I'm not good enough, I'm in pain, I'm a victim. All that gets replaced with I'm strong, I'm powerful, I'm attractive, I'm
Mm-hmm.
healthy, I'm getting healthier every day. So that's why the exercise is helpful on the mental level. When it comes to the physical level, when we exercise with weight training and weight bearing exercises, we're rewiring the brain through what's called neuroplasticity. That's what enables the changes in the brain to stick. And those neuroplastic changes are the antidote for chronic pain, because pain is
Mm-hmm.
experienced in the brain through the wiring of the system. You know, it's the nervous system that brings the pain from the body to the brain and back again in that feedback loop called the P factor or pain factor that tells you that something hurts. So you
Mm-hmm.
rewire the brain and you rewire yourself out of chronic pain. I've written articles and theses on that myself, and so have others. John Sarno talked about it. Others have as well. So that's why I had you exercising. It changed your identity and it rewired your brain. That is repairing the damage. So the two-step process of recovery from AS and other conditions of chronic pain are to first remove the cause and second, repair the damage. That's it. No matter how you do those two things, that's what you have to do. If you want to go figure it out for yourself, it took me about 10 years. And you can do the same thing, or you can get it in 10 days. You can get it in 8 hours in my group coaching program.
Mm-hmm.
But however you do it, be sure you do it.
Yeah.
Reverse the cause and repair the damage, and you'll be free.
Yeah. So this is kind of fun. This is totally unexpected. I'm sitting here next to my file cabinet, and you talked about my experience working out, reversing the cause, repairing the damage, and how my identity was shifting when I was working with you from a place of feeling very victimized to a place of feeling like a victor, right? Thus the name of the AS Victors Association. I very specifically remember when I started to really identify with being a victor, and I would look in the mirror and my body was changing. I was putting on muscle. I mean, I came out of that putting on 25 pounds of lean muscle. And what I was going to sort of pull out of my file cabinet here, this red folder, it says Skies Medical from 2014 AS. And in here, there's a piece of paper. So when I started working out, I went to the fitness gym that was close to you. I can't remember what it was called. And they did,
Lifetime Fitness. We'll put in a plug for those guys.
sure, they were great. Yeah, the big, beautiful center. I loved it. I absolutely loved going there. And I was limping around in the beginning. I was dedicated. And they did all these tests. And one of these pieces of paper in here somewhere, there's a lot of old medical stuff here, had inflammation reports on it, because they did a bunch of tests for me, which was cool to see what I was going to do with it. They kind of wanted to sign me on for training. And the trainer was like, whoa, like you have a lot of inflammation in your system. And he was kind of like, he was like, huh, like, are you okay? Like you have a lot of, and he's not a doctor, but he did these reports. And I was like, I'm good. Like, yes, like I have some arthritis, but I'm good. At the end of that period of the couple months that I was working with you,
About 3 months.
3 months, yep. I went back and they did all the same tests again. And the trainers were like, dude, who are you? Like, you just put on 25 pounds of lean muscle. And for my body type and for how I looked in the beginning versus how I looked at the end with how I was limping around in the gym, they were just like, whoa, like, we don't know what is going on, but like, good work, man. And then the inflammatory rate came back on that same test and it was completely back to normal. It was like, it was low. It was in the low end. And it was totally red flagged in the beginning. At the time, I was also taking way less medication. So it wasn't being suppressed by medication. It's that through exercise, through coaching, through working with you, through my own willingness to change and get out of that comfort zone, I had reversed the cause and repaired the damage.
That's right. And then when I was in the gym with you, I noticed a lot of girls were checking you out, man.
Yeah. Yeah. You know that.
You had that
And
energy. You had that savoir-faire. You know, you really had that elan, that you had that joy going on in your life, and you were emanating light.
yeah. And one thing that's really worth saying, so you have a coaching practice for people with AS because that's what you had, that's what you are, like, you love those people, you're super dedicated to it. You also have a private life coaching, success coaching, wealth coaching practice as well.
Yes.
And like, same with me, I now currently have a life coaching practice and a health coaching practice. Part of that I recognize is the level of confidence that I learned from that coaching period with you. Like, to connect that with the women's situation, it's not only was I reclaiming my body, but in order to do so, the mental shifts happening were of empowerment, were of confidence, were of tapping into a life purpose. And I felt stronger and stronger and stronger. And that led to, I can see with your coaching practice of having both of those and my implementation of it, how it led to such success.
Well, teaching people to be wealthy and happy is easy. There's certain rules that you follow in my immaculate reception process. That's what I give them, and the 5-stage process that takes them to manifest and create whatever it is they'd like to experience in life. The practice with people with AS is giving back to the people with pain, because there's so many people who are being led, down this fool's alley that says there's no cure. You have to become a lifelong customer of the pharmaceutical industry, and you're going to be in pain forever, and you better believe it. And I mean, they're just being led off the cliff, and it doesn't have to be that way. So that's why I focus and specify my practice for people with AS instead of just health coaching. I've been a health coach. I've been a relationship coach. I've been a success coach. I've been a nutritional coach. I've done all these things. I worked as an adjunct therapist in a naturopathic clinic. I've got a lot of training.
Yeah,
My
you
life
do.
has been about training. And there's nothing I'd rather do than help people out of pain and suffering.
Uh-huh.
That's what it's all about.
And it all kind of like snowball effects, and you build momentum, and it kind of rolls into each other. Like, the lessons that people apply to their life to reduce pain can also be applied later on in life to other things. And I remember
It's
you
the
telling
same stuff.
It's totally. And I remember something like this I've said this on the podcast before, but it's something I really want people to hear again. And it's, you told me that getting out of pain is not the end goal. That's the beginning of a very good life.
That's
That
right.
is,
That's exactly right. It's not the goal in the end. It's the beginning of an
yeah,
incredible life.
yeah,
If you can overcome the pain and let go of AS for good, what else can you do? I mean, how inspiring is that?
totally.
So one of the big mega guru coaches named Tony Robbins, you've heard of, he has
Mm-hmm.
people come to his weekend retreats, which cost $1 zillion to attend, and there's 1 million people there. There used to be. And he has them walk across coals takes like 4 seconds to get across the bed of coals. They walk barefoot across a hot bed of coals. And he tells them, if you can do that, you can do anything. And I say, you can learn to do that in a couple of minutes. I know how to do that. It's a mindset. If you can overcome some disease in your life, that is truly amazing to me. Walking across coals, okay, great. Overcoming illness for good and becoming a new person, living a brand new life as a result, and inspiring those people who follow in your footsteps,
Yeah.
that's divine. What else
Yeah.
can you do?
Yeah.
Doesn't get any better than that.
So here's an idea. At our retreats, people are going to heal from AS, and then we're going to make them walk across some coals just for icing on the cake.
That's one thing Tony Robbins does. He does a lot of other things. He has people shinny up poles, like totem poles or flag poles that are 30
Yeah.
feet in the air and stand on the top. They have a harness on, but they have to face their fears. He just makes them face their fears. The way I'm doing what I'm doing, there's no fear. Nothing to be afraid of. There's no fighting. You don't have to. See, that's the mistake that people with AS are making. They're fighting, and that creates more stress, which creates more inflammation, and pain in the body.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the first thing we do, which is called the counterintuitive principles that people can't seem to figure out because they don't make sense. They're not intuitive. Stop fighting your AS.
Yeah.
That's the first counterintuitive principle that we use in the AS Victors program. And it gets a lot easier. If you stop fighting it, it gets a whole lot easier.
Yeah.
So that, that makes life easier and gets the job done better. And it's what you haven't been doing that you're now doing that makes the changes in your life that take you out of that pain and suffering, which create a new comfort zone for you, which is what you experienced when you were going to the gym. This felt comfortable. This felt like who I am. This is great. I love this. It feels so good. And the results were tangible. Did you take those results about no inflammation and 25 pounds gained lean muscle mass in 3 months? Did you show doctors that information? And were they blown out of their chairs?
I did not go and show doctors. I still have it. I've saved it for a long time. I talked with Lifetime Fitness and told them the story and gave them a testimonial, and they
They
loved
were
it. I don't know.
flabbergasted.
Yeah. And I don't know what they did with it, but Peter, also, like, I almost don't think they really believed it. Like,
It's unbelievable to these folks. That's why we don't have 1 million people flocking to us for coaching today, is because they don't believe it.
Yeah.
But as you believe, you receive, and we're doing it every day. And I have the testimonies on my websites, and I've got all the books written and all of it. It's there. You're doing your work. You've done it. I've done it. If we can do it, they can do it.
Yeah. And you said some really good things about the constant fight energy with AS. And naturally, I think that our first instinct when we're dealing with pain is to try and will ourselves through it, like not let it slow us down. I'm gonna walk down this hallway even though I'm in pain. I'm gonna force myself to do it. I mean, I did that for years. I think that I probably did that for probably 5 years. And I pushed it so hard that when I was a zipline guide, I was an adventure guide, I almost hurt people on zip lines because I couldn't break them in time because I was moving so slowly, just willing and forcing myself through this pain. I was fighting. And then I started realizing that we like you teach, we begin to make peace. We stop fighting. And for anyone out there that's listening, if you're tired of fighting, if you're tired of this constant fight and struggle, then start getting on board with like what Peter's teaching and what I'm teaching. Because the first step is to let go of that fight energy that's actually making the symptoms worse. And it's making you tired. It makes people really, really, really tired. And
it's stressful.
It's super stressful. Yeah.
That creates more inflammation, is stress.
Yeah.
So it's a never-ending circle. No wonder the practitioners say there is no cure. Not as long as you're fighting it, there's not. That's for sure.
Mm-hmm. And there are very specific ways that both of us teach that allow people to not surrender to the illness, because that's a scary concept. I'm gonna like give up. I'm just gonna surrender to this thing. That's not it. It's surrendering our fight against it and beginning to use the tools that we can take from the experience in a positive manner, apply them to our life, begin feeling better because we're learning from the experience. And then our nervous system comes back into balance more and more and more. Would you agree?
Well, that's exactly what I'm coaching people to do in the beginning, of course, is to let go of what no longer serves them. So that's what surrender means to the Eastern Zen mind. In the Zen tradition, to surrender means I let go of what no longer serves me. That's all. It doesn't mean I quit, I give up, I'm a chicken, I'm a coward. It means I'm letting go of what doesn't help anymore.
Yeah. Yeah.
And waging the war and the battles is what doesn't help anymore. You've done it, you've tried it. Believe me, if fighting a battle in a war against AS actually worked, I'd be leading the charge. I was
Yeah.
doing that for 10 years when I had the symptoms. I was battling every single day just to be normal, you know, to stand up straight. It would take me an hour or two in the morning to get to where I wasn't hunched over, you know, and hunchbacked until I could stand up straight if I could. Some days I couldn't get out of bed at all. You know what that's like.
Mm-hmm.
That no longer served me, so I stopped fighting it.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, that's the thing that prevents people from doing their work and doing the healing process, which, by the way, we can't will ourselves into healing. Healing
Yeah.
happens organically and naturally within the body. What we have to do is get out of the way of healing by releasing the stress.
Yeah.
That's really all it boils down to, is getting rid of that root stress. And instead of thinking of it in terms of getting rid of it, let it go.
Yeah.
That's step one to
Yeah.
reversing the cause of AS and inflammation.
Yeah.
Now, how do you do that? Well, it would take me about 2 hours to explain it, but that's what we teach in our coaching program. In my group coaching program, that's what we go through immediately.
Yeah. So I have a neat story about my experience with AS and other symptoms too, and then doing what I could to will myself into health, and the guidance you gave me with that. So I was living in Hawaii at the time, and I remember I always have loved exercise. And I remember, so when AS was really bad, it also went into different places in my body, like my knees, which isn't always typical of AS, but I was also diagnosed with psoriatic arthritis, and I had psoriasis and irritable bowel syndrome, and inflammation went into my feet and my ankles. And at this point, it was really in one of my knees. I can't remember what one. And I remember before my coaching call with you that day, I remember sitting outside, and I put my hands on my knee and held it like this, kind of like cradled it in my hands. And I was like willing my knee to heal. And again, like I was just learning about mind body stuff. I was really pushed physically and mentally with fatigue and pain to start figuring something out. So I was open to anything. And I'm trying to like tell my knee to heal from my brain and like will it to heal. And I got on the phone with you a few minutes later and told you what I was doing. And you're like, you know, Sky, good work. Like you're moving down the right path. And that's not how healing works. You don't will yourself into healing. The body heals naturally once you get yourself in the right headspace. To me, I was like, okay, so like maybe my brain, you know, maybe that wasn't actually working. And you clarified all of that for me really well, like on that session.
Yeah, and big changes ensued, huh?
No, totally. Yeah. Yeah.
So you learned a great deal in a short amount of time.
Mm-hmm.
And the payoff was the pain went away. First, you get comfortable with the pain, and then it goes away because it's taught you the lessons that it's come to show you. That's mind-body awareness, and it's mind, body, and spirit practicable. So our physical practitioners, the doctors, the nurses, the therapists, useful as they are, as good of people as they are, they don't go there.
Mm-hmm.
They're not necessarily interested in what's your spiritual practice like and how does that help you heal. Spirituality is what you find within yourself. The journey takes you within to the true self and the connection with your source. That's a spiritual pursuit. So that's a big part of healing from chronic illness that's left out because people they think it's only in the body. If I can just find the answer in the genetics, if I can just find the answer in the nervous system or the blood-brain barrier or whatever it is in the tissues of the body, then I'll be happy. But it doesn't happen in cases of chronic pain and suffering, chronic illness. You know, it's useful if you break your arm, absolutely. You want to go to the emergency room and get the bone set and let it heal. But it isn't the cast that heals the broken bone. That just holds it in place so that the bones can do what they do. And that's an internal experience, such as it is And in that way, it's very similar to a spiritual practice. Healing is a spiritual practice.
Yeah,
You can't think your way into it. In fact, thinking can take you away from it.
totally. Well, and I recognize with that experience I just explained that my focus was entirely on an issue, a problem. And again, with your guidance, I was able to get my head focused on other things. And you talk about a spiritual practice. And one way I like to think about it, it's very simple. I think that Wayne Dyer was talking about this when I was actually working with you. He's talking about in spirit, inspired. When you're inspired, you're sort of in spirit, like you are in a very good feeling state. And I have two clients right now that are feeling better and better and better. And so they're becoming more and more inspired about life. And they're beginning to do sports and things that inspires them. And they don't really have deep spiritual practices at all. Like, I don't know if I've ever talked to them about meditation or whatever, which can all be profoundly helpful. For them, it's getting them to do things, to feel that inspiration. And when they're feeling inspired, to go do inspiring things. Like, that's what a healthy person does, right? A healthy person does what they want to go do, especially things that feel good. And the more they do, and the more they sort of focus on that, the more their body naturally just starts feeling better, and their focus changes, and they begin to evolve into a healthier being, and the body says yes.
That's a spiritual practice, that inspiration. You could say it's mental or emotional. Those things are involved as well, but it comes from that deep desire to be or do what it is that inspires us. Inspiration means to breathe in. So you're breathing in new life. Expiration means to exhale, to breathe out.
Mm-hmm.
Conspiracy literally means to breathe together. Conspiracy. And it's the same word as spirit and spiritual, and the same root word in the Greek and Latin languages. So that's a spiritual practice. The best spiritual practice that all the masters and founders of these great world religions were interested in was how you treat other people. That's a spiritual practice. Not reading scripture, not bowing and praying 4 or 5 times a day or whatever your system is. Those things are fine. They're not spiritual practices. They're academic practices and intellectual, because you're doing it mentally. When it becomes deeper imbued, when it imbues your entire being with light and energy, that's a spiritual practice. And you can feel that when you treat other people well. And it isn't just other people that we are to treat well. We're a people too, aren't we? You're a person, aren't you?
Mm-hmm.
I'm a person. So how do I treat myself?
Yeah.
That's what's most important.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm
That's a
glad.
spiritual practice.
Yeah. I'm glad you just made that connection, because I was going to bring it up unless, but you did. It's how we treat ourselves too. I mean, both you and I know that we were really, really hard on ourselves in younger years. And that's one reason why AS developed in our bodies. I've never gotten on the phone with someone and been like, do you feel like you're hard on yourself? Are you kind of a perfectionist? Are you hard on yourself when you don't achieve your goals? Everyone says yes that has AS. Like, I don't know if you've met people that are very kind to themselves that still have AS. Maybe they don't realize how hard they're actually being, because I didn't for a long time. But it's a very common trait. And that's what the coaching does, is teach you the tools to reduce that stress. Start
If
feeling
you have a
better.
good coach. Some coaches want you to get even harder. Shoulder to the wheel, nose to the ground, push, push, push. That's not the kind of coaching I do. It's too much labor. I was
Yeah,
like that for most of my life when I was young anyway. I've been there, done that. There's better ways.
that's a really cool point. So the other day, Peter, I was listening to, I downloaded a book. You may or may not know this person. His name is David Goggins. He's known as like one of the world's toughest men. He ex-Navy SEAL, lost like 300 pounds, had a really rough childhood. Definitely a very, very high achieving person that a lot of
Yeah,
people look up to. And there's a lot from him that I could learn, there's no doubt.
sure.
And his book was kind of all about like being hard on yourself and listening to that mean voice in your head and doing what it says to do. And I kind of disagree. Like, I learned how to make peace with myself, do things that inspire me more. And again, if I'm getting too lazy and that voice is like, come on, Sky, get up and be active. Like, there are things to do today. Like, yes, to listen to that. but not to sort of just belittle myself constantly, and it's actually to make peace with a lot of that.
So to everything, there's a season. There's a, like you rightly pointed out, we could learn a lot from him and he could learn from us if we were interested in doing so. So to everything, there's a season. If you're going to be a Navy SEAL whose job it is to kill people wantonly and go through incredible training to be able to do that, you better be pretty strong-willed. You better listen to that ugly voice in the head that says you're not good enough until you accomplish the mission. We need people like that in the world, apparently, because of the world we live in and the nature of the human condition. It's just not the place for me anymore.
Mm-hmm.
So it's all, the Buddha said it's all about balance. We want to balance these different features. The yin and yang of Taoism is the same thing. It's the same principle.
Yeah. Yeah.
Give and take, this and that, up and down, left and right, right and wrong, good and bad, male and female, duality. It's about balance.
Yeah.
So when you're feeling balanced, are you feeling pretty balanced in your life right now?
Yes, I am.
That's the ticket.
Yeah. And then I can apply some of that more aggressive energy in places. Like
where it's appropriate.
Before this podcast, I just went on a mountain bike ride. I've been biking a lot this summer, and I have really aggressive trails right outside my house here. And it's fun. That's the thing, is like once I'm feeling good and there's like, I combine it with inspiration and aggression, then like I feel very strong. I'm charging down, I'm like jumping over roots and trees and rocks and stuff. But again, it took me learning how to make peace with some things to get my body to let go of that inflammation, and then I can be more aggressive. What? Say that again?
Who did you make peace with?
Myself.
Yep, that's it.
Yeah. And I didn't know how. Like if someone would have said, "Oh, you just need to make peace with yourself," I would have been.
Yeah, right.
I would have been really pissed off.
Ask Goggins about that.
And for people with AS, it's probably the healthiest place to start that I can think of.
Well, that's what our chronic conditions are asking us to do, and that's why it works. Yeah. Making peace. Again, to everything, there's a season. So sometimes we have to press on and work harder. Other times we get to relax, and enjoy life. But you're certainly enjoying life when you're out there on that mountain bike, pushing it to the limit and going over those challenging trails. I mean, that's got to be fun.
Oh, it's super fun. Yeah, it's dangerous, but it's fun.
Famous last words.
Okay, Peter, so we're about out of time here, but what I want to say is sort of in regards to the everything there is a season concept. I know that you have classes that you offer that start at different times, like every other month you have a new thing happening. For people who feel that it's in season to begin making peace and healing their body and letting go of pain, what's the best thing they can do to contact you?
Go to the asrecoverychallenge.com. Take the AS Recovery Challenge. It's an 8-week program, 1 hour a week, that gets you through the training and coaching you'll need to go into remission and recovery from AS. It's called the Recovery Challenge. You can also find resources at asvictors.com and reach me there through email or IM or whatever it is you'd like to ask questions about, or just go there for the free resources. I got lots of free resources for people to be able to help them through this process.
Cool. And you were kind enough to let me sit in on a couple sessions of the AS Recovery Challenge, and it's a lot of what you taught me in person several years ago. You've also done a really good job to consolidate it so that there's a shorter time frame for a lot of things, and I've seen it change people's lives very quickly. So
everybody's getting definitely results.
Yeah, and I'm that's an unsolicited sort of response for me. It's something that I like really have seen happen and got to participate in myself. So it's a great class.
Well, yeah, just check it out and see if it's right for you is what the advice is that I would give to people who are looking around and searching for a way to really take care of this matter called AS and chronic pain and get to living the great life. Again, that isn't the goal. People think if I could just get rid of the pain, I'm gold. That's the goal for me. That's one stepping stone to an incredible life experience. So we do that first. Let's let the pain go first. And then who do you get to be? What is it that you would choose to do with your life from there? That's what's exciting. That's the inspirational part of it.
Yeah.
So this is getting you through the first track and then on to living your best life.
Totally. Yeah. So for everyone listening, think basically what I'm getting from this is Peter's encouraging you to think bigger. Think beyond just getting rid of the pain and think about how inspiring your life can be on the other side of that.
And imagine yourself in the best case scenario with all the experiences you could ever want and all the wealth and comfort that you would ever aspire to, anything that you'd like to experience or create in this world. Dream big, think big, because you'll get most of the way there, if not all the way there, and that'll take you a lot farther. In fact, there's an old expression from the Native Americans, I think from the Siouan tribes that are near where you live. It goes, it's better to aim at the moon and hit an eagle than aim at the eagle and hit a rock. And I guess while the animal rights folks aren't real happy about that, it's the example that they're talking about that's important, the lesson therein.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Aim big, guys. Go big.
Perfect, Peter. Well, fantastic words to finish the show with today. Thank you for your time. It's always fun having you here, and I get to learn so much every time. So thank you.
Indeed. Be well and do good, my friend.
All right. And we'll see you again soon.
Sounds great. Great.